While the question 35mm or medium format could comfortably sit in a book of hot debates, we're not here to do that. When I moved from 35mm to medium format, I was here on YouTube trying to find a video that showed side-by-side shots between the two. But I had a surprisingly hard time finding one. Now that I've shot with various formats over a number of years, I realized the importance of seeing these visual differences side by side, especially when trying to move from one format to the other in making an informed decision. So today I want to do just that. I'll be comparing 35mm with 645, which is the smallest available medium format, and I'll be talking about the differences, all objective differences, while showing you images of the same scene shot with both cameras, using similar focal length, similar aperture, same film stock, so you can decide for yourself what these differences mean to you and whether it's worth it for you to upgrade from 35mm to 645. It's going to be a really quick one. I do talk about my subjective opinion towards the end of the video, but if you want to jump around, feel free to use the chapter markers available. All right, let's do it. The economics of shooting these formats is fairly straightforward. You get 36 or 24 frames depending on the roll size with 35mm format, as opposed to 15 or 16 frames with a 645 depending on your camera. Your 645 negative is just over 2.5 times larger than a 35mm frame. A roll of 35mm or 120 format film cost roughly the same, but keeping in mind the cost of developing and scanning with the lab, you would end up spending less dollar per shot on a 35mm frame compared to that of a 645. With image quality, assuming we're shooting with same ISO film like we're doing here, grain is more visible in 35mm, and this contributes to harsher contrast, lesser sharpness, and brisker changes to brightness and tones than when compared to 645. Some of these differences are not visible when looked as an overall image, especially on smaller screens, but when zoomed in or looked with larger screens or printed on a same size paper, these differences start to become apparent. One way to overcome the differences caused by larger grain structure combined with smaller canvas is to choose smaller ISO film stock while shooting 35mm format. So in this case, instead of Ilford HP5, which was a 400 ISO stock, I could shoot with an Ilford FP4 with an ISO of 125. But this has its own drawbacks of not being able to shoot where available light is limited, and you'd be restricted to slower shutter speeds compared to a faster ISO film. The increase in your negative size with the 645 contributes to a wider angle of view for same focal length and a shallower depth of field for same f-stop when compared to 35mm. So to achieve the same angle of view of a 50mm lens at f1.8 in full frame, you need an 80mm lens at f2.8 with the 645. This change in angle of view and depth of field is commonly referred to as the medium format look, but it's all math, and if you want the same look within the same frame, you are able to achieve this with 35mm as well. Maybe that's a deeper conversation to get into. Let me know if you want me to make a separate video in the comments. With 35mm, we get a large selection of fast lenses and cameras with autofocus and auto exposure features compared to 645, not to mention the vast collection of affordable point and shoots in 35mm space. So user-friendly and a bit more pocket-friendly as well. The setups are generally lighter than a 645, which is particularly appealing if you are a run-and-gun shooter and not solely working in a studio. When it comes to scanning at home, it's easier to get good scans out of a 645 negative, even with cheap flatbed scanners. While you need a better option in the form of a digital camera with a macro lens and a good light, or a dedicated 35mm scanner at the very least to get a good scan at home. This is due to poor optical resolutions available in generic flatbed scanners, and they struggle to resolve details from a smaller negative. In like-for-like situations, 645 objectively delivers better image quality. But for most people's use cases, and considering where the images are being shared, 35mm is plenty good, and the cost benefit is in its favor as well. The changes in the field of view that we discussed early on, the medium format look, is certainly a pull towards larger formats because you're getting the compression of a telephoto or standard focal length with a wider field of view. But having said that, the more I shoot with 35mm format, the less and less I feel the need for a 645 in most situations. If I'm shooting portraits and if the available light is low, I do prefer 645 because it allows me to use higher ISO film stock without the grain being too in your face, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's my opinion, and that's it for this video. I hope it was useful. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.